Hi, and welcome to the final project presentation for Web API. This is Group A, consisting of Donald De Silva, Gemma O'Connor, and Leo Amancio. Issues noted. So when the project was first started, it was created around the typical OOP paradigm and didn't follow the pattern that is expected of a RESTful application. So this involved coding all the logic and relationships in the base classes themselves. Eventually, when that was resolved, there was a case where an object passed from the client wasn't created as expected. For example, when a customer object containing first name, last name, and email was passed in, the newly created object only contained the email. Even though the code and logic was the exact same as another system which is working fine, it was hard to ascertain what the cost was as each file was compared line by line. Only by starting over was the problem resolved. Other issues included trying to utilize sub-resources, which initially was somewhat tricky. Apart from that, it was hard to troubleshoot the code while it was running, and certain additions seemed to break the entire system. The code starts with the model classes, the customer being the main container. So the customer model contains all the details in order to construct instances of a customer. This is enhanced by the customer service layer, which handles the basic functionality of the customer component. At the top, there is a list which will store all instances of customers created. The rest are helper methods which provide various functionalities such as returning a list of all the customers or creating a new customer. The customer resource is the entry point for requests sent to the API. The base class is marked with the path annotation and annotations which tell the API what types of resources it produces or consumes. The post method creates a customer instance. It requires a request with the message sent via the body in JSON form. The post method creates a customer instance. It requires a request with the message sent via the body in JSON format. It returns a method from the customer service layer called createCustomer, which simply passes the object created from the client. This method takes that object created and sets its ID to the list size +1 and then adds that object to that list. I'll quickly demonstrate how that is set up. Currently, Jersey project is running, so I'll use Postman to accomplish this. So right now, if I try to retrieve all customers, it should return an empty list. By using a post request with the header set to content type application JSON and a body containing the values that we need to send, you can just post it to the endpoint there, and when that's done, you can see the response that a new customer has been created. And when you refresh the page, you can see that the customer has been added to the list. Now these two endpoints are the same. It's localhost port number 49000/API/customers. How that works is in Jersey, all requests are directed via the path command. So any request coming through the customer's path is directed to this resource, which then gets passed to its helper methods. So in this case, when it's a post message, it's picked up by this annotation and directed through that method, as we already seen. Or conversely, if it was a get method, the same as the one we used in the browser, it will try and find a get annotated method without a path, as in it will only follow the base path, and once it finds it, it will call the associated method. In this case, it's calling the customer service getAllCustomers, which in this case returns the list, which keeps a running total of all the customers that are added. Now I'll pass on to one of my team members.
So if you continue on with another path from customers, for example, getting a customer by ID, like you can see there is a get annotation with a path that adds on to the base. So in this case, it will be API/customers/customer ID. So a parameter passed through the request will be intercepted and then converted into an int, which will then be passed to a customer services getCustomer method. This is passed to the method, which is in turn passed to the customer services getCustomer method. The getCustomer method takes an ID and retrieves that customer from the list, accounting for the one added when the ID was set. Next, we have a get path annotated with customer ID/accounts/new. This sets the path and then returns an account resource. The account resource contains a post annotated method with no path, which passes it to the account services createAccount method, which uses the passed in path param to create a new account. Now I'll pass on to another colleague in our group, Leo.
Continue on, there is a path annotated account ID/transaction, which returns a transaction resource object. Depending on what type of HTTP request is incoming within the transaction resource, it gets passed to the associated method handler. In case of a post message, it is intercepted by the process transaction method. This method accepts the incoming transaction object from the client as well as the path parameter ID. This calls the process transaction method in the transaction service class, which handles the processing of the incoming of transaction based on three types: debit, credit, or transfer. In this method, all conditions are accounted for. So if a request is coming in with a debit, it is handled as a debit or a credit or a transfer. Now we will continue with the rest of the demonstration. So in this case, we have already made a customer. So we'll add another customer here. Now we can see a second customer has been made. So for each of those customers, we are going to add an account. So this is for the first customer, which is calling the path to create a new account. So if you go back to the customer resource, this is the path for create a new account as previously explained. So let's just go back here. Now, so when I run that, the first customer now has an account called savings, and similarly for the second customer. So if you're just updating the customer ID as shown by the path here and send a post request, now, there we go. So the second customer now has an account. So I just hand it over now to my colleague.
And there are transactions which can be done as well. There's a debit and a credit, but first we'll do a transfer. So that's following another path outlined in the API documentation. So in this case, we'll be transferring from account 1, and then the destination account is actually set in the message body. So in this case, it'll be transferred to account 2. We'll just duplicate the window to see the before and after effects. So now when we transfer from the first account, an amount of 5 and the type is transfer, we can see the effects it has. So from the first account, you can see a transaction has been created, actually for both. So the amount transferred was 5. It shows the current balance or the original balance in the original account, which is 10, and then a description which we set in the JSON message body as well. And the account it starts from and the account it goes to. It's the same for both transactions. And the transfer or the transfer type, or sorry, the transaction type. So basically, you had a balance of 10 and you transferred 5 out of this account to the other account. So the updated balance is 5, which shows in the transaction as well as the account balance. Now if you go to the destination account, you can see that the amount is the same. The transfer that came in is 5, and the previous balance or the current balance in that second account was 20, and it shows the originating account as well as the destination account, just like the earlier transfer or the matching transfer for the first account. The type is also transfer, and that shows that the updated balance is 25. So if we check with what we had before, the balance was 20, 5 was passed in, and that was updated, and it shows the updated balance as well as the original balance, and the same thing for the original transfer account. Now continuing on with the rest of the demonstration. In this one, we're crediting 50 into the first account. So if we send that, you'll notice that the first account has a second transaction, and the amount that was sent in was 50, and previously we had a balance of 5 after we transferred it to the second account, and the updated balance now shows 55, which is also shown in the overall balance of the account. And now we'll actually debit 50 from the first account as well. And now when you refresh it, you can see that the balance has gone back to the original 5. And there is the third transaction, which showed an amount of 50 being debited. Current balance at that point was 55. And then the updated balance shows 5. Now, just 2 additional demonstrations. So in this case, we are updating the email address for the first account. So if you check the first account, you can see what the current email address is. And if you call this post message and refresh it, you can see the updated email. And similarly, we can change an account's sort code. So again, this is for account 1, which has a sort code of BOFIE14. We can update it to that one. When we refresh it, you can see that's changed similarly. So you could try it with the second one as well. So in this case, all we have to do is change the account number. So in this case, this is the account ID, number 2. And then when you run it and refresh, there you go. You can see that's changed as well. So that's all for the demonstration. Thank you so much for watching.